Welcome back to another special edition of Taking Inventory, Snap Mafia. This week, we're joined by Garrett Rothstein, CEO, founder of Q, one of the earliest employees at Snap, first 150 employees, been at Quibi. Garrett, you're just like a legend in the space. Thank you for joining the podcast. We want to hear about your background and Q and how you got started with Q.
Yeah. Hey, guys, it's awesome to be here. I mean, who would have thought? We met all these years ago at Snap, and now we're recording a podcast together. This is pretty.
I would not have taken this bet.
Nor would I. Nor I think anyone that knew us back in 2015, 2016. So what is Q? So we all grew up around the same time in the 90s with TV Guide on our coffee table. And that TV Guide was like a Bible to me, and I imagine it was to you in your home, where every night you wanted to know what it is that you were going to watch on TV. You would open up this booklet, you would look up a time, a channel, and you'd say, oh, okay, Seinfeld was on at 7 p.m. on NBC on Wednesdays. You would turn on your TV at 7 p.m. on NBC, and what was playing? Seinfeld, because it was in the TV Guide, and that was essentially the truth. And so now today we have streaming services out the wazoo. I'm paying for 7 or 8 things in my home. I'd imagine the same thing is for you. And it's become really difficult for people to keep track of what it is that they're watching across a million different services. What we're building, in short, for Q is this modern age TV Guide that helps you keep track of everything that you want to watch across all your major streaming services, see where things are available to stream, share recommendations with friends, and see what other people like you are also watching and interested in. Trying to make this very fragmented, disjointed space simple, unified, easy to consolidate and track.
And you just given your background, Daniel referenced it, but you were at Snap, you're at Bird, you're at Quibi. We've done a bunch of different things kind of across like the media landscape. Like, how did you decide that you were like going to stop working in like big tech and like go like build a better TV Guide? Like what's the Q origin story?
Yes. In 2020, I was working at Quibi. Rest in peace, pour one out for them. And it was a really wonderful company, and I was very bullish on it at the time when I joined. And then we launched in April 2020, and then COVID happened, and the world essentially shut down. Those of you who are not familiar with Quibi, it was a mobile-first streaming service, whereas all quick bites, Quibi's a contraction for quick bites, with short-form episodes, all 2 to 10 minutes long episodes. And it was built to be on the go, a streaming service for when you're having these in-between moments. You're commuting, you're waiting in line somewhere, getting ready in the morning, whatever it is. And given that the world shut down, there wasn't a lot of between on-the-go moments for people to be consuming Quibis. So the company struggled quite a bit out of the gate, which is quite unfortunate. And I was sitting at home all day without much to do. I was obviously working at the company, but there was very little I could do to save the overall business strategy. And so I spent all of summer 2020 ripping through movies and shows. My iPad followed me around everywhere in my apartment. I watched all 40 seasons of Survivor in 90 days. I was watching everything under the sun. And I was using the Notes app in my phone to try and keep track of what it is that I wanted to watch next. There were constant recommendations coming from Slack channels, people taking pictures of their television and posting it to their Instagram story or Snapchat story. I was talking to my roommates, texting with people. I'm on the phone. Everyone's constantly discussing what it is that they're watching, but there's no good place to aggregate and keep track of these amazing movies and shows that were coming out, and also what streaming service they were on and which of my friends recommended it to me. And the fact that I was using this pretty much digital pen and paper, the Notes app, to keep track, that felt really broken and archaic to me. And creating an app around movies and shows is not particularly novel or unique. There's been a ton of apps and websites in the past that have tried to do this. There are apps and websites coming out now, and there probably will be many, many more apps and websites in the future. But going back to what I said earlier around this TV Guide concept, none of them were really focused on a very strong utility aspect of where can I watch, how can I watch it, who of my friends are watching it, what are people like me thinking in a very simple, intuitive, user-friendly way. And so that's why I wanted to create Q, was to solve a problem for me of where can I watch, what can I watch? And so I was iterating on this idea. I was writing it down. I was socializing it with friends. And I went to a buddy of mine. I was like, hey, I'm jamming on this concept. What do you think about it? Is a friend of mine, Artine, who worked in venture at the time. And we talked through it. He's like, hey, by the way, I know this famous entrepreneur who's thinking about solving this same problem. Is it okay if I introduce the two? And this was in the summer of 2020. I was like, a famous entrepreneur that's infinitely better than me. No, a non-entrepreneur, at least not yet. I'd worked at a bunch of startups, but I hadn't really ran any company by myself, obviously. And he introduces me to this guy. His name's Spencer Rascoff. He was one of the co-founders of Zillow. He also was the CEO for a decade. And Spencer and I got on a call. This is summer 2020. We talked about both of our visions for what we thought an app or website like Q could become. We each had our own unique perspectives. And at the end of the few conversations, we thought it would be fun for us to build a business together. And so I was thinking about how I was going to pursue this, how and when I was going to quit Quibi. And I was thinking about my exit plan from the company. And then I was probably within 2 weeks of leaving. And then I see the link, I get linked an article, Quibi to shut down immediately. I was like, oh, wow, like that's really unfortunate that my employer is shutting down. But also, I'm sure we've all quit companies before. Putting your notice and quitting and going through all that's quite a production. The decision was pretty much made for me. And so Quibi shut down. I left the company. It was announced on a Wednesday that Quibi was shutting down. My last day was Friday. And on Monday, I was trying to recruit engineers to work with me. And I was pretty much full-time on Q immediately.
So then when you started it, like how long did it take you to get this first version into market? And like, kind of tell us about like the product evolution. Like today, the app does a lot. Like it's social. It's got like the dynamics are kind of like gamified. Like it's pretty awesome if people haven't checked it out. But like, how did you take this thing to market initially?
One thing I learned the very hard way is that launching a consumer app, after working at successful and somewhat successful consumer app companies, you think that you know how to launch a great app. You don't. It is infinitely more difficult. And thank you, James. It's very nice that the app looks nice and it's helpful and as wonderful as it is today. That was very much not the case in June 2021 when we launched what I thought was this beautiful, amazing, fully fleshed out product. And it was nowhere near where it is today. It was very much in an MVP state, but there are a lot of core things that I just didn't understand about what good product was. And a lot of that changed when we picked up our third co-founder, Donnie Giovannini, who's a former Snapchat guy as well.
Sick golfer, right?
Yeah, he's really good on the golf course, even better in Figma and in Jira. And so Donnie had left Snap after about 7 years. And like I said, he was one of the first product and design folks over at Snap. And he also is a big movie lover. And I was talking to him about what we were building right around the time that we launched in the App Store. And like I said, he just left Snap after a bunch of years and he wasn't doing anything. So I said, hey, why don't you come on and build this with Spencer and I? We have a great team, but we need some help on the product and design side. And he said, yeah, that sounds great. And so suddenly we went from not exactly knowing what we were doing to having an A+ player on the team. And Donnie joined as co-founder and chief product officer. And he really helped open our eyes to what good scalable product looks like and how to build wonderful consumer products that people like and also are able to share with friends. And if you look at the pre and post Donnie era, you'll see immediately when he joined, probably within 2 or 3 weeks, we had a bunch of builds cranked out that were infinitely better. I'll give you an example. On our trending page, we wanted to show what was popular across all the major streaming services in this very aggregate way. A personal behavior that I have, and I'd imagine you and many of your listeners have as well, is that when you're trying to figure out what to watch, you'll jump from streaming service to streaming service to scroll through and say, oh, this is popular on Netflix, this is popular on Hulu, this is popular on Max, whatever it is. We showed this vertical list of most popular at the top, then the second most popular, third most popular. And Donnie said, no, why don't we give a great snapshot bird's eye view where we show you the top 10 across Netflix and actually pull in Netflix's top 10, actually pull in Max's top 10, actually pull in Apple TV's top 10, and you can scroll through vertically by service, then horizontally 1 through 10. And that has quickly became one of our most popular features because people said, wow, I can see at this very high level, what is the most popular thing across all these services that I subscribe to? And we also show you very quickly with a thumbnail and a number, how many of your friends have interacted with that title. So if you're scrolling through that Discover page, you see that Three Body Problem is #1 on Netflix today, and that 7 of your friends have interacted with it. That gives you proof on both a platform level that, okay, this is #1 on Netflix, and a number of people that I care about and follow on Q are also interacting with it, giving you that personal social proof. There's that double validation that a lot of people need to say, okay, I'm going to actually check this out because the people of Netflix and my network said it's good. It's going to be worth my time. And that was a great insight that we unlocked pretty early. Again, all the credit of that goes to Donnie. Starting to apply that kind of framework of convenience and simplicity of really dense product information was a big unlock for us to really level up the product experience in Q.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Q user, and that's one of my favorite features is kind of the social proof. I follow you, I follow a bunch of our friends from Snap, and like Three Body Problem, I actually started last night, and part of it was like I've heard mixed reviews, and then I looked, and it's 70%, really highly rated. 10 friends really liked it, and so I was like, all right, I'll dive in. But having that social proof requires a network, right? And as we know from Snap, building a network is really hard, especially today where it's even more competitive with more different consumer app services. So how did you go about acquiring the first set of users and using that then to start building out the network, which is now I've got many friends giving advice.
Yeah, the cold start problem is real. And the phrase, if you build it, they will come, is the fakest thing I've ever heard. That's not how consumer products work. You guys know that just as well as anyone else. It is really hard to get people to care about your app or really anything that it is that you're building. Even though we're not a direct competitor to platforms like Instagram or TikTok or Twitter, we're still competing for that same time. There's a very finite amount of time in the day and only a certain number of hours that you're on your phone. And even though the feature set of Q is completely different from those other apps and platforms that I just mentioned, like I said, you're still competing for that time. So how can you build something that's compelling enough and valuable enough is a question that we're always asking ourselves. And the way how we did it was not focusing. Well, the thing that we did wrong at first was focusing on, okay, how can we get as many social groups on right away? When your product is in this MVP state where it's not unbelievable, it's going to be really hard to get mass adoption. So instead, after failing to get users, I was doing everything from college ambassador programs. I was putting up flyers and stickers myself. I went to USC for a few days and I was literally chalking on the ground saying download Q and trying to hand out cookies and merch and stuff. And none of that really moved the needle in a meaningful way. But then what we started to do is focus on a certain type of user and personality and say, okay, can we build a feature for a certain type of person that we think would love Q and then get them onto our platform? The biggest unlock that we had for really starting to hit more mass adoption was a feature that we called copy and paste. And when we first started talking, I described how I was using the Notes app in my phone to keep track of everything that I was watching. And so what we did was we built a feature where anyone could copy and paste a plain text list from their app, from their Notes app, from Google Doc, from a spreadsheet, whatever it is, and then paste it into Q. And within just a few moments, it would immediately translate that list into an actual queue. So for example, if you had a running list, Dan, of Three Body Problem, of Shogun, of Succession, all these shows that you want to watch or are currently watching, you would copy, paste it into queue, and in just a matter of seconds, it would populate your profile. And then that way, instead of having this list on your phone, you'd have this beautiful grid of posters inside of Q. You can watch the trailers, see where things are available to stream, read reviews from your friends in the community, and all that good stuff. So instead, we started marketing Q around not just, hey, it's an app for movie lovers or people that love shows, but we would use TikTok and Instagram videos that would say, do you use the Notes app in your phone to keep track of your movies and shows? Try upgrading to Q today. We would show the visual of someone scrolling through the Notes app list, copying it, pasting it into Q, and you would see the list of 100 movies, then turn into 100 posters. And to anyone that uses the Notes app in their phone for this exact use case, the light bulb goes off immediately and they say, wow, this feels like this was built for me. Whenever we'd post this onto TikTok, every single time there'd be comments of someone saying, wow, I thought I was the only one. But in reality, there's hundreds of thousands of people that do this exact thing, probably millions. But it was amazing to see that very specific problem being solved and to watch people get so excited about it. And so we started thinking about, okay, are there more specific problems and use cases and profiles of users that we should be pursuing and building for?
That makes a lot of sense. Is TikTok? So I don't use TikTok. I have like mixed feelings about it, but
anyone who's listened to the podcast knows your feelings.
But is it crazy like how big of an unlock it is?
I've never seen a greater acquisition or marketing tool than TikTok. It's insane. It's really difficult to crack and figure out. It took us about 130 videos before we had one go viral organically. And once we got it to go viral and figured it out, the light bulb went off and we said, okay, let's keep iterating, take those learnings and continue to build and tweak until we can keep getting better and better and better. And now with videos going viral on TikTok and on Reels fairly regularly, and say what you will about TikTok and the legal and ethical and moral implications. Outside of that, it's driving a lot of downloads. It's driving a lot of downloads, which is just pretty cool. At no cost.
I'm not judging you. I want you to do unbelievable things. To take advantage of TikTok for as long as you can. Is Spotlight like a thing?
I'm a shareholder, so I hope Spotlight does well. Our sentiment is shared.
Good.
I'll leave it at that.
So there's obviously a lot of like studios that like are in it, maybe unbeknownst to them, but are relying on your service to help with discovery, right? Of course, the streamers, but then like the studios behind a lot of these movies or shows. And so what is your relationship, if any, with the streamers, with the studios, with marketing teams? Like, is there one?
Yeah. When we first started out, a question I would get asked a lot is, are you friend or foe to the streaming services? And some people would make this argument that you may be taking eyeballs away or directing attention to their competitors. I was a little bit nervous about that, but our hypothesis was streaming services would like us because essentially we'd be drawing attention to their services and facilitating conversations about their titles. And thankfully that turned out to be true. And we have some sort of working relationship with every major streaming service today, which is really exciting to us. A lot of it is around marketing opportunities. We had our first official studio partnership in October of last year with Lionsgate for the Hunger Games prequel, where we gave away a red carpet VIP experience to one lucky user to attend the premiere in Los Angeles. And we also had buy one, get one free discounted tickets for a number of users as well. And at the end of the day, we were driving awareness for users to learn about the movie, having them interact with it on our platform. Anyone that adds Hunger Games or any title to their queue that's unreleased, they get a push notification on the day that it comes out. So why would any streaming service or studio want many, many thousands of people to be alerted the day that their title premieres? I don't know about you, but I don't have notifications on for any of my streaming services. I don't have it on for Netflix or Hulu or Prime on my phone. obviously I have it on for Q, and we actually have a pretty good opt-in rate for notifications. And so Q is this really great way as this aggregate platform for people to discover, discuss, and save content. Why wouldn't you want your users to know about your content? So it's really a net positive for everyone, which is great. And yeah, it's primarily on the marketing side. So we're also getting invited to red carpet premieres and press junkets to interview cast and crew and cover their press. So yeah, it's definitely a very healthy and great relationship.
Yeah, that's so cool. I think about like Rotten Tomatoes, which is like kind of the currency, at least for like most people now. Like, I've always found them. It's like confusing. Like Rotten Tomatoes is just weird for some. The ownership structure or something that must be weird. There's some. Maybe how it works, but like, do you kind of see maybe Q over time becoming like the currency, like that could be distributed along with this content, or do you think of it more as like
Yeah, I love that. So yes, we do. I don't know about you, but I've never met a live human being who has told me that they've contributed to the audience score of Rotten Tomatoes. Have you?
No.
I have no idea how
No.
that
Never.
works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So on Rotten Tomatoes, there's an audience score and a critic score. And like I said, I've never met anyone that's contributed to the audience score. Okay, it's probably, I guess, anonymous people on the internet. That's totally fine. And then there's the critic score where it's real life critics. Like, great. A lot of people want to know what cinephiles, both critics and audience members, are thinking about movies or shows. We think that Rotten Tomatoes is a wonderful score. I think it's a lot of credibility. I look it up personally, along with Q information, which I'll get to in a bit. And I think Rotten Tomatoes really owns what do movie lovers, show lovers, real critics think about a title. Great. That's their authority. That's their space. IMDb. What does the internet think about a movie or show? Okay, great. Also a credible source. For Q, we think about what do the people think about movies and shows? Everyday people. Q is meant for the everyday casual consumer. There are other platforms out there that are for much more intense, involved, cinephile, hardcore, cinematography loving audience. That's great. Our consumer is typically the everyday watcher of movies and shows who wants a better and easier way to track and discuss what they're watching. And so just a week or two ago, we launched out what we're calling a Q score. And it's essentially just the aggregate positive score. So if you go to any movie or show, you can see a scale of 0 to 100% of what is the overall sentiment on that title. So again, like I said, Rotten Tomatoes is the critics, IMDb is the internet score, Q is the score of the people. And we hope that one day Q will be in that conversation, and we're confident that we'll get there as we continue to grow and also merchandise that Q score.
As you get more of this data and like you're starting to score things and more people obviously are coming into the Q network, like have you seen some fun things with the data, or have you seen some trends that like surprised you?
Absolutely. It's pretty wild to me to watch real life behaviors be reflected in Q. And the most exciting part of that is predictive data. So if you go back to my Twitter, or my X rather, May of last year, there was a trailer drop for a title called Five Nights at Freddy's, a Blumhouse horror film based on a video game. Not sure if you've heard about that. It had a ton of interaction on our platform when the trailer came out. Over the next few months, tons of people were interacting with it. I saw there's a lot of hype on the app. And so I tweeted out when this happened, I think that this movie will be a surprise hit in October when it's released. I think it'd be a 10x or more return for Blumhouse and Universal, who made the film. And if you were to look at the box office predictions by professionals, come October, people were saying, oh, it's going to do 50 million, 80 million box office. It ended up grossing nearly 300 million globally. And so blew away all expectations. And no one really saw that coming, but it was something that we were able to see because we have this Gen Z young movie and show loving audience that's opting in and telling us what it is that they want to watch next. even the name Q is about what's next. The name of the is all about, and the purpose of the app is about queuing up your watch list, watch intent. And so that's the primary action that happens on the app. So we're able to see pretty consistently things before they become successful, before they're, or right as they're released. We can see the watch intent and the numbers change. And almost always, if people are interacting with it on Q at a certain rate, it's going to actually perform in real life, whether it be streaming or in the box office. And that's really exciting for us. Another thing we'll also see is that as content gets licensed out or moves around services, we also notice a change. So a great example, Ballers, which was originally on Max, was licensed to Netflix in summer of last year. And this is all public data, but there was a 400x increase in viewership when Ballers went to Netflix. So it went from something like 1.7 million minutes viewed to 600 million minutes viewed, like a totally insane jump, because that's the Netflix effect. And if you were to look at Q, our data, we see that exact same thing pretty much immediately. And so those trends are reflecting in our dashboards and our data in literal real time. And so we're thinking about, okay, how can we help make studios smarter and better and more efficient? And that's a really exciting opportunity for us.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, or if you do a hedge fund, no, call Emron. No, the kidding. And then we've talked about this before, but like just in terms of the scale, can you let listeners know like how many countries are you in? And I've seen, will you also just share the story about you tweeting the All In guys? But like, yeah, how many countries are you in? How many services you guys support? And then how did you get the All In guys to care?
Yes. So we're in about 120 countries. We support over 200 streaming services, which is great. There's a lot of nuances around metadata. I've learned how difficult it is to really nail information. So there's a lot of manual QA, a lot of AI, machine learning that goes into making sure that we're servicing the best and most accurate metadata. The Q is a global platform on both iOS and Android. So most countries and most major streaming services are covered inside of our platform. There's obviously still a lot of work to do, and it's a constant process that I don't think, quite frankly, will ever change or ever end, rather. And how we got All In guys to notice us, I'm a weekly listener to All In, and there was one week where Chamath tweeted, or rather, he in the podcast he talked about how he can't keep track of what to watch. In the group chat, people are always sharing recommendations, and that he tries to remember what it is, he gets lost, and he ends up turning it off and watches YouTube or something. And so in my scrappy founder mentality, I thought, okay, I need to get these All In guys on to Q. Genuinely, I would love to know what it is that they're watching. And so I think about how can I get them to notice me? So took out my trusty tripod, took out my phone, recorded myself talking to the phone saying, hey, I'm Garrett. I'm the co-founder of Q. I saw you guys are having difficulty keeping track and deciding what to watch. If you give me 1 minute of your time, I promise I can help upgrade your experience significantly. So I recorded that, threw in some captions, cut it together, doing a screen recording of Q, tweeted it out at Chamath and all the other All In guys. I then asked 20 of my friends to reply, like, comment, retweet, do anything to interact with it. And then I'm pretty sure Chamath got bombarded by hundreds of notifications from people in my network and extended network. And eventually he replied and said, all right, cool, I'll check it out this weekend. Don't think he ever did. But that's okay, because it actually drove a pretty meaningful amount of downloads for us, which was exciting. Some people just were discovering us for the first time. There was a handful of people who thought that they liked the entrepreneurial mindset and the hustle, which is great too. And yeah, that was fun to get a to get a reply. When I saw my phone light up, it said Chamath replied. I was like, oh my God, he's definitely on queue now. And his response and his response was, I don't watch TV during the week, so I'll check it out this weekend. And this was on like this is like a Tuesday, so I was like, oh man, we're definitely toast. There's no way this is lasting for 4 days, but all good. I forgive you. Chamath, if you're listening, I forgive you.
That's right. That's right. Chamath is a weekly listener to Taking Inventory.
Oh yeah, only Snap Edition. Yeah, you never know. The analytics are horrible. You can't tell who's listening to this stuff.
Wait, Garrett, I want to go back to you launched in all these countries. You have like there's 200 services. I mean, the scale is insane. Obviously, the language, there's a language barrier as you go into new markets, but then the user acquisition in new markets. So how do you launch in so many new markets and do so effectively and then utilize the data that you're capturing? Because I imagine every country has different habits, different preferences, et cetera.
And also just are not to do a double question, but what are like the behaviors of like the consumers there? Like, is Netflix huge everywhere? Like, what's like the world actually watching?
Yeah, great questions. In regards to international expansion, a lot of it kind of handles itself naturally through our own organic virality, where the videos and the algorithms will find the countries, because our videos are primarily in English, our videos and Q will find itself in front of consumers that primarily speak in English or consume a lot of English television. Young people around the world oftentimes watch and love Western media. So even if you're in Sweden or the Philippines or Germany, if you're 16 years old, there's a very good chance you're watching Stranger Things in English or English with local language dubbed. And so there's some level of English competency that makes it okay for us to market as we do, and the algorithm finds English-speaking consumers. There's a big project about to go underway of localization of the language. But if you look at our data of who's really gravitating towards Q, it leans very heavily towards countries and regions that like Western culture and have high English proficiency. So for example, if you were to look at in Asia, our biggest country is the Philippines, which also has the highest English proficiency by far of the region. If you look at Europe, number one is UK, no surprise there. And then after that, it's going to be the Nordics, where also English proficiency in Western culture is really embraced, and they speak English beautifully. And so that's how it kind of played out, but how we're actually going about launching some of those specific markets, other than the organic virality kind of taking care of it on its own. We've done a few local creator programs where we'll work with a group of influencers that are local to their country, and they'll talk about Q, and we'll help them make the videos, and we'll pay them to talk about our app. And that usually does a pretty good job, because I mentioned before, if we have some kind of hook, like if you use the Notes app in your phone, here's a way to upgrade. Guess what? Using the Notes app in your phone to track your movies and shows is not unique to just people in Southern California or people just in America. That's a global behavior. Or using a spinner wheel to help you to decide what to watch. Indecisive movie and show habits is not a problem that's specific to America. That's everywhere where televisions exist. And so having local creators talk about our app and these problems that are global has been pretty fruitful for us.
And then in terms of which services are like run the world, like is it who we think it is, or is there some like weird massive service in India that we've like never heard of?
Yes. So Netflix is definitely king, and for good reason. They are so good at what they do. They create a ton of content, and I could talk for hours about why I think Netflix is so incredible. But I'm thinking about other major services that you would have no idea are massive. India, Hotstar is the biggest thing. right up there with Netflix. It's part Disney Plus. It's part live sports. They are an absolutely massive, massive service that provides a very deep catalog of content. Other big local services that are specific to different regions. So in the Nordics, there's something called Viaplay. In the Middle East, there's a bunch of unique specific services that all are Middle Eastern cultural specific content. But really, yeah, it is Netflix at the top for sure.
And is Netflix, you alluded to it, but is like Netflix are they kind of like the meta of streaming? Like just in terms of like execution, once you understand it, is just like outrageously impressive.
Yeah. So almost everyone that signs up for Q tells us what streaming services they do and don't have, mainly because it helps personalize your experience inside of our app. And something like 96 or 97% of those users have Netflix. And the second place one isn't even close. And the way how Netflix operates, to me, is they're just next level. And I love all of our studio partners. They're all amazing. They all do great work. But when we first started working with Netflix, the speed, the efficiency, the organization in which they work, even on like a marketing and PR level, dealing with services, platforms like us to organize interviews and red carpet experiences, something as small, detailed as that, they are so on top of and so thorough. I was so impressed with how they operate. That's the DNA that breathes throughout the entire company. And that's what makes them good, is they have A-team players putting out A-team work. And they have this down to a science. The way how they license content, both in from other studios, and what it is that they put out there, how they market, timing, everything is so deliberate. I'll give you an example. Apple Vision Pro launched, and it had its big moment earlier this year. They licensed Ready Player One a few days before, and they put that on their home screen. And they used the hero image of the main character with the goggles on that looks strikingly similar to an Apple Vision Pro to capitalize on the moment where everyone was talking about that product. And it sounds really small of, oh, well, they licensed this title from a bunch of years ago and they put it on the hero image on the main screen. But again, it's those small details that add up, how they just think differently and know how and when to promote something that makes them better than everyone else.
With Netflix, I guess, they've introduced an ads tier. Prime Video has like notoriously just crammed ads in. Do you guys see like the difference between ad viewing or not? Or like, do people tell you if they're on a free tier or premium? Like, yeah, what do you guys see around that?
The way that it is today, we do not see the difference between ad tier or not, but that's something that we will be supporting in the future, but currently.
Okay. Garrett, this was super fun. I think anyone listening should definitely go download Q, follow you, follow us. But before we let you go, give us like your top 5, what's on your queue today.
Top 5 on my queue today. Right now, I'm loving Shogun on Hulu. Highly recommend to anyone that needs their Game of Thrones fix for some violence and sex. It's the way to go. I also just started Fallout this week. I love Fallout, one of my favorite all-time gaming franchises on Prime. I'm a huge fan of Survivor. Like I said, I've seen every season, and I'm watching that week to week. I also just finished Physical 100 on Netflix, which is a Korean physical competition show. It's super intense. And I also just watched Quiet on Set on Max, which is a short doc series about some of the scandals around 90s Nickelodeon. Not a very happy documentary, but really well done and tells the story of those who were affected very, very tactfully.
Yeah, Christina and I watched that. It's very well done, but like so sad. Kind of a bummer ending there. But I guess maybe if you were then also just like which of these in brighter, or we'll edit this part, but Then one final question. If you were to invest in a publicly traded streaming stock based on what you're seeing, what would you pick?
You would have to answer that. I think.
No,
I think.
you know.
I think we know. I think we know. I mean, honestly, when we started working with Netflix, I thought, oh my god, I think I need to buy their stock because I was so impressed with how they operate. So that is who I would go for right now. In a world where there's so much consolidation happening, they are at the top, and I think there's a chance that they end up gobbling someone else in the near future.
Okay. Now,
Actually, that's one last question is then along those lines, I saw like Bob Iger is talking about on Disney Plus, they're like going to add basically like linear like style like apps to it. So you'll just watch sort of live TV in there. Is that going to be like a trend you think we see like as these apps try to just control more screen time?
So that's already a bit of a trend with this AVOD fast experience. And so what that is, it's free ad-supported television is what fast is. And so if you look at Pluto or Tubi is an even better example, they've been blowing up over the last few years, where Tubi has a bunch of on-demand AVOD titles that you can watch with ads in between, but they also support hundreds of different channels where things are constantly streaming. And Samsung has this, Pluto has this, Tubi is the one that's probably the most popular right now. But if you wanted to, you could watch The Challenge from MTV 24/7 in this fast format and just watch it as if you're watching it on TV, but with commercials in between. You could watch Survivor. You could watch, I've been watching a lot of Supermarket Sweep, the old like 90s competition show, just because it's on our Samsung Fast channels on our television, and it's fun. And so, yeah, I do think that that's a pretty good idea. You can keep people in your ecosystem. You can probably insert a bunch of ad breaks in between. So you're keeping people on your platform for old content that you already have. It takes the decision paralysis out of deciding what to watch. It's like flipping through the channels and saying, oh, my favorite movie is on. May as well just keep it. I don't need to make a decision because the decision is already made for you. So yeah, I definitely think that this linear sort of experience, whether or not it be ad supported, will continue to be a growing trend in streaming.
Okay. I think that's a much happier note to end on. And reminder, all of this, none of this is investment advice. This is all for fun.
Yes, no investment advice. No investment advice.
But where can listeners download Q? How can they follow you on the app?
Sure. So you can go to the App Store, Play Store, search Q, Q-U-E-U-E. We should be the first result of both. If we're definitely let me know. That means we're not doing a good ASO job. But no. But yeah, just search up Q on the app stores. You can find me on Q at Garrett, Garrett. But even better, you can follow me on X, G Rothstein 1. Someone already got G Rothstein, so I had to throw a 1 at the end there. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. I respond to all the messages, even the bad B2B sales inbound. I reply to those too.
You're about to get inundated. But Garrett, thank you so much for joining today.
Great to be here. I had a lot of fun. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.